morning, and thank you for watching. I'm Michelle Morgan. I write contemporary romance and women's fiction. I have a little website called fictionedit.com. That is my home base for editing primarily romance novels. And I'm here today with a debut author. Her name is L.B. Alexander, and she wrote one of my favorite novels of last year. It is titled SWAN Lake, a seductive reimagining of the most beloved ballet in history. And it is also the first book in Alexander's SWAN series. Welcome, Ms. Alexander.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. My pleasure. And thank you for agreeing to this interview with me. As you know, it's my first time doing this. And when I had the idea, I immediately thought of you as somebody I wanted to share with my community and hopefully a growing audience of romance writers and readers.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to be part of this inaugural launch. As you know, I have so much admiration for you, not just as my editor, but also as a fellow writer. So
thank you.
I love the platform you've built here with fictionedit.com, and I'm excited to see what happens with this.
Thank you so much. And congratulations on your debut romance novel. You know, I loved it. And to say I love it is an understatement. I know your readers are really enjoying it. And I'm thrilled to be able to chat with you today. For those who haven't heard of you yet, can you tell us a little bit more about you and Swan Lake, what this book means to you, and maybe a hint of what readers can expect when they download Swan Lake, which, by the way, readers, is available free with Kindle Unlimited?
Sure. So Swan Lake is an upmarket romance. It's about a troubled young former ballerina and the mysterious man who enchants her. While it is inspired by the famous ballet, a reader doesn't necessarily need to be familiar with Tchaikovsky or the Bolshoi to understand what's going on. For me, I've always been very inspired by the artful, very theatrical kind of storytelling that you find on stage. And I wanted to see if I could translate that to a book. So for Swan Lake, readers can expect some very high emotions, very lavish settings, a lot of steam, heavy drama, and of course, a happy ending, all on a backdrop of fine art.
Excellent description, and I agree. It is. It's an excellent translation, very steamy and dramatic, and with a happy ending that leaves the reader still wanting to know more. So I'm glad you decided to continue with the series because I'm definitely intrigued by these two characters and their story.
Yeah, I thought about doing just the one book, but the more I wrote, the more I realized that the characters were taking on a life of their own. So
they have so much more to say to each other and experience together. And I can see, I can not quite guess, but I'm intrigued to know some of the ways that they might bump heads down the road. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And I'm always curious and interested when an author markets their brand as upmarket versus contemporary romance. And so in Swan Lake, you weave in these elements that remain authentic and accessible to contemporary readers while adding a layer of depth and beauty and richness that really does set it apart as upmarket. Specifically, your references to art history, music, and dance, and even high society. How much did you have to research for this book, or was this a culmination of knowledge gleaned from your own education and past experiences?
So I'd say it was actually a little bit of both. I did study and train in ballet for about 13 years. I've played the piano since I was about 5. And I am a massive art history nerd. So I was fortunate when writing Swan Lake to have that good foundation of classical art knowledge. And that really is sort of my personal hidden love story as an author for Swan Lake. It's really an expression of a lifelong love affair with art. But there definitely was some research involved as well.
Yeah.
For the high society aspect, I was born here in Los Angeles. I've lived here for most of my life amidst the palm trees and beaches and endless sunshine. So it's really fun to speculate about the glamorous lives of all the movie stars and billionaires that live right here in Hollywood. It helps beats the traffic. So
yeah, lots of inspiration and lots of time to mull over your characters and muse about what they might be thinking or feeling or saying to each other or experiencing while you're sitting in that daily commute.
While sitting on the 405 surrounded by
But lots of inspiration there too.
Yeah.
That art history was my favorite class in college. And I thought I had a firm knowledge of everything that I had learned, but you just blew everything out of the water. But knowing a little bit of that, I think it helped appreciate your references more, but I don't think that a reader going in has to know anything about art or dance or high society. They can just kind of learn along the way and be surprised as you kind of weave in just so carefully and so subtly all those sort of upmarket elements.
Oh, good. Thank you. No, I'm so happy to hear that you had that response because, the intent was I really do want Swan Lake to be a book that's accessible to a lot of different readers. Former ballerinas, not necessary.
Yeah. Although they will certainly have that added appreciation if they know some of that. And I think they can check your facts too. And really, you do know your stuff. So it makes it a really engaging and really intriguing, compelling read. So just fabulous job. We could go on and on and on about what a great job you did, especially for a debut novel. I was super impressed. I read a lot of debut novels, a lot of really great romantic fiction, and still very impressed with your work. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that so much.
You're welcome. Well, you take a big risk with Swan Lake in that both April and William, your heroine and your hero, are quite damaged in their distinct ways.
They are.
Yes. It is, like we said, a very sexy, erotic romance, as well as emotionally provocative. You address mental illness, post-traumatic stress, even the Me Too movement. Had you set out to elicit a specific reader response in combining these grittier, darker elements? And were you afraid to include them?
I didn't necessarily set out to elicit a specific response. Looking back, maybe I should have been afraid to include I wish I could say that, I was crafty and, ambitious enough to try and plan out a specific response. But, realistically, I'm not that clever.
You pretend very well. You fake it well.
Thank you. If anything, I'd say my only goal was to perhaps inspire readers to care about the journeys of the characters that I created. As a reader, I love books that challenge me to feel, and I knew that was the kind of book I wanted to write.
Yeah.
So Swan Lake, it's a story about two profoundly misunderstood people, and my hope was to tell their stories about living with mental illness, about having the world assume the worst of you, about not feeling heard in a way that's respectful, highly intimate, and hopefully interesting to read about.
Absolutely. Very interesting to feel like these characters are so different than I am, but in a lot of ways the same. A lot of the struggles and sort of, the struggles really that you face and just kind of as a human in our modern society, they were very relatable and yet just so sort of otherworldly at the same time and a part of this setting that is very different than probably what most of us experience on a day-to-day basis. So really, really cool blending of relating to them and yet still feeling very interested in them because of how different their lives are than most of ours.
Yeah. No, it was a challenge to write about them, but it was a fun challenge, and I'm looking forward to continuing their journey, seeing where they take me.
I am too. I really can't wait to read it. Whenever I find a new author I love, I always wonder, what do they read? What music do they listen to? What inspires them to write? Any insights about these or your creative process in general that you'd like to share, especially for the writers who might be listening in?
Sure, definitely. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm very inspired by other art mediums when I'm writing.
Yeah.
A little bit of backwards way to go about it. But I find so much inspiration from, listening to a piece of music, and it can be Stravinsky, it can be Britney Spears. I've listened to pretty much everything. And I love also getting plot bunnies by walking to a museum. Like if I spend an afternoon at the Getty or at LACMA, I will have like 3 dozen plot bunnies by the end of the day, and the struggle is trying to figure out what I'm going to write about. But
they don't pull you in too many different directions, so you're kind of like, what do I work on now? What's really
it's a good struggle to have, though.
Yes,
it's very
absolutely. Good. Absolutely.
I love the way that, art makes me feel, and, that's really what I try to capture when I write. So I'd say I always start with a feeling and then craft a narrative or characters around that. I'm not really much of a huge outliner. I probably should be.
I wish I could be. It'd save time.
Yeah, I know. So I definitely tend to lean towards the, let's sit down with this feeling and sort of see where it goes style of writing.
Yeah. I love that. And we'll talk a little bit more about your writing in just a little bit. But I wanted to say that we mentioned earlier that Swan Lake is the first book in a series. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm personally thrilled to have you on my editorial calendar for the next release. Can you tell us more about the Swan series? How many books are planned? And when do you hope to release the next installment?
Sure. So the SWAN series is a planned quartet of 4 full-length novels with 2 novella-length encores. Yeah. The first of which I hope to release within the next few months with the help of my absolutely fabulous editor.
Thank you. I know we need to maintain some level of anonymity, but I would love for readers to get to know you a little bit better. So I have a few questions that I thought were maybe on the lighter side, but let's see if they end up that way.
Okay, sure.
The first one is, what do you wish you had known before starting to write a book?
Oh my goodness, that is such a good question. I wish I had known to invest in a lumbar support chair prior to writing.
Yeah.
That's going to sound very strange. But, when you're getting into
I love the practical advice.
Sure. Writing out a 100,000 word book. You don't realize when 6 hours have gone by and it's 4 a.m. and all of a sudden you have back pain. So good chair, I'd say.
Cool. It's hard to stop. Once those fingers get flying, it's hard to take a break.
Absolutely.
Especially when the characters are really speaking to you.
I know, and you want to get the words down, fast enough before you forget them, because again, I'm not an outliner, so when it hits me, I have to get it out as fast as possible. So
me too, and I forget them 100% of the time. I think the biggest lie I tell myself when I'm trying to fall asleep and an idea strikes me is, that's a really good idea. There's no way I'm going to forget that in the morning.
Oh, no.
And I always do. Always.
It's like brains in that regard.
Yes. If your book became a bestseller, how would you spend the royalty check?
Oh my goodness. That's a very good question. So for my entire life, this has been since I was like 5 years old, my favorite summertime treat has been a snow cone. Mm-hmm. So I would buy like an industrial-sized snow cone machine, nice. The kind that you see at the beach. Nice. So I could make myself snow cones all year round. that would be purchase number one.
I love that. And in Los Angeles, you could enjoy them all year round.
Exactly. No, perfect.
Making the rest of us a little bit jealous.
Yeah.
Some more than me. I'm in Texas, so we have enough days that we could enjoy it.
Perpetually 75 and sunny here, so snow cones on Christmas sounds fantastic.
And somehow so green and lush all year round. I love that. That's what I miss about Florida when I moved to Texas, was how I took for granted that it was green, all that there were leaves on the trees all the time. And so I get sad in the winter when everything's kind of brown and barren here.
Oh, no. Well, we've had a lot of rain in LA over the last few months, which is pretty unusual. We've actually been in a drought for about 5 years. So things are green now, but it will probably burn out by about August or September. So
oh, yeah.
I'm enjoying it while we have it.
Well, out there in mostly sunny LA, you also have a demanding full-time career. What are some tips you can share with other writers struggling to manage their time amid other obligations?
Sure. So I would say tip number one, Google Calendar is your friend, or any other calendar app that you choose to use. Writing, I sort of like to liken to, any other kind of practice or, sport even. It's something that you can become more efficient with if you're practicing on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So, even if you have a really busy, full-time job or family at home, even if you're carving out 20 minutes a day first thing in the morning to get a couple of paragraphs out or to sketch out a character profile, really is valuable and goes a long way. You don't necessarily have to write 10,000 words a day. I mean, I know there are some people who participate in those challenges, but I would just say write every day, as much as you can, as little as you can. Just do something daily to continue to practice would be the most important thing to always prioritize your craft in any way that you can.
Excellent. I love that. Yeah, decide that it's important to you. And for as long as it's important to you, keep doing it. And sometimes it's hard to remember how important it is to you when you're waking up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, but it's still important to you, even if you're not really thinking it is that early in the morning. So I try to practice that too. I don't always succeed. And I am just always impressed with anybody who can write 10,000 words in a day. I think even if I had nothing else to do, I could not write that much in a day. I think I cap out at like 3,000 words, no matter how much time. That's all the brain power that I have put towards writing. So, those that output is so impressive, but we shouldn't beat ourselves up over it if we do less, as long as we're consistent. And it sounds like you really have been consistent with your output and remembering how important this project is to you, and just keep plugging away at it.
Well, I've certainly tried. Sort of in that same vein, though, the max number of words I've ever gotten in a single day, and it was on Swan Lake, was about 16,000 words.
Yeah. Wow.
Beyond that point, I couldn't write anything for about 3 weeks, just because my hands were hurting. But I pushed myself so hard that I burned out. Yeah. So I would just say, sort of treat writing like exercise. Don't overdo it, but practice consistently, and before you know it, you've hit your goals.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that is something that a lot of writers need to hear, and so I hope they're listening, because we all really need to hear it, about being consistent and managing our time and getting it done, even if we're not as fast as some other writers who can just kind of blow us away. Well,
I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, me neither. They are gifted in that way, and I don't quite have that gift, but I keep trying my hardest. I think it's all we can all do.
Sure.
Before wrapping up, I wanted to share a brief 2-minute excerpt from Swan Lake. Of course, it's on Amazon, and it's free with Kindle Unlimited. And so there's the look inside on Amazon, and it's a really impressive opening, that prologue and then into the first chapter. It's so poetic and beautiful. And then it takes us into sort of contemporary life. I liked this scene. This was actually one of my favorite scenes of the novel, and it is kind of earlier on in the scene. We have April. She's our main protagonist. She's just accepted this job for the Wolf Group, and she is William Wolf's assistant. And it's her first day. And in this scene, you are basically introducing the characters, having them interact and really see each other and be aware of each other for the first time. And that is always a critical scene, especially in a romance novel. And so it's sort of a meet-cute that is kind of cute, but it's also cool and sort of sexy in a way, and almost a little bit frightening, kind of makes you nervous, a little suspenseful. So in the scene, of course, it's April's first day. She is in William's office, and she has become overcome with this urge to start dancing. So it's her first day of work. He's never met her before, and she is dancing in his office. So how can that possibly go wrong?
No idea.
So here is the scene. And again, it's going to be about 2 minutes. So hopefully long enough to get a good feel for the scene, but short enough that I'm not just kind of reading half the story. And it goes, somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew it was foolish to dance while standing in an office. On my first day of work, no less. Yet still, I seized that unique possession only classical music could rouse within me. It was my first non-chemical respite from my sickness in months, and I was desperate to enjoy it for as long as I could. My inner thigh muscles hesitated for but a second before finally allowing me to enter the climactic développé. My right leg extended at a high side angle, as the violin vibratos signaled the conclusion of my lonely impromptu adage. And then I heard the front doors to the office open. It was as if I'd been electrocuted, for my limbs instantly dropped, stunned and stupefied by a new panic. The steps that approached were far too heavy to be Ellen's. I couldn't imagine a more awkward way to meet my boss's boss. So I lowered my head and tried to make myself as invisible as possible, a member of the corps hiding in the shadow. And you'll have to forgive me if I pronounce anything wrong.
You're doing beautiful.
To my relief, I remained undetected as he walked toward the desk. His steps were powerful, but not frantic. In fact, his pace seemed almost prolonged, the relaxed speed of someone who was used to others waiting on him. I exhaled in relief when I heard a piece of a sentence that sounded like, "just fucking settle." Surely that meant he was fully engaged in whatever conversation he was having. I heard the computer come to life and papers shuffle as he continued his clipped, quiet speech. So I began to silently tiptoe towards the front doors. I was nearly out of the office when his movements suddenly halted, and I heard the distinct sound of a man clearing his throat. Shit. Who are you? The rich, deep timbre of his voice, like the basso strings of an overture, activated a strange instinct within me, something primordial that almost urged me to dance again. It went beyond rational explanation, beyond intelligence, beyond thought. It was a mindless, unconditioned, purely physical reaction to an auditory stimulus, an electrifying, tingling command that spread throughout my entire body, apexed in the most hidden depths of my torso. He'd spoken only 3 words to me, yet it felt like I had been summoned by biblical commandments. As automatic as jumping from the touch of fire or salivating from hunger, I oriented myself in the direction of his voice and took 3 steps before I even realized it. April, Ekdal, I replied once I found my voice, keeping my gaze fixed on the floor. and what the hell are you doing dancing in my office?
Oh my goodness. That was so exciting hearing you reading it.
I debated, I wanted to have you read it. And then I was like, well, this is my favorite scene. So.
No, it's probably what I would have chosen if I were to read it myself. But no, that was beautiful.
Well, thank you for writing it. It was beautiful. And I thought that would really give readers a good sense of your craft, your excellent prose, vocabulary that again is higher level but still accessible, especially in context, and such a unique, clever, and memorable way of bringing these two characters together. And I read a lot of romance. I love a lot of what I read. But it's very cool to have these scenes that just sort of stick with me for, months later. And that was definitely one of them. That just very memorable, very clever way of doing the meet cute. So good job. I loved that scene.
So much.
And thank you for letting me share it.
Oh, of course.
Thank you again, Ms. Alexander, for trusting me with your editorial work. Swan Lake, as you know, was one of my favorite novels to edit last year. And I know you're going to blow me away with the next one.
I definitely hope so.
No pressure. You will. And thank you again for coming on today, for sharing more about you and your fiction with all of my 5 viewers who might be watching this. Hopefully more, and hopefully that number will continue to grow. But either way, it's just so much fun to talk to you and to talk more about your book and get some more insights from you, even after the business of editing has been wrapped up for a while. So thank you for coming on here with me today.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
It's been a lot of fun for me too. It's been a blast. I want to remind readers that Swan Lake is free with Kindle Unlimited. And Ms. Alexander, can you tell readers how they can download your book, how they can find you and connect with you on social media and anywhere else where they can keep in touch?
Oh, definitely. So Swan Lake is available as an ebook on Amazon for $2.99 and for free in Kindle Unlimited. And I absolutely love connecting with fellow readers, fellow lovers of romance, fellow writers. And you can find me on Instagram at lbalexanderauthor. And also you can check out my website, lbalexander.com, where you can subscribe to my newsletter and find the latest updates about me and my projects.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone watching. Again, I'm Michelle Morgan. I write and edit mostly romance novels. I'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment. You can email me, michelle@fictionedit.com. Follow the hashtag on Instagram, loveyourmanuscript. That's what it's all about. Thanks for watching.